The exclusive. What really happened from the classroom to the hotel room to their own home.
In your son's bed.
In my son's bed.
And for the first time, the surveillance videos from inside the school, the hotel, and the selfie the teacher took with the boy of them kissing. This evening, new outrage for those parents after learning that teacher's fate.
That's it. She just crossed the line.
Also tonight, the beautiful daughter who looked nothing like her father. Suddenly, the entire family finds out why.
And it said that they shared 0 DNA.
Duped at a fertility clinic, it wasn't Dad's DNA, it was the lab tech's.
And he gave me this just sort of evil smile.
And tonight, is that worker the father to hundreds of children?
This is so creepy.
The 2020 investigation. And a very personal note about our friend, our colleague, and her brave journey. What Elizabeth revealed today about her own private struggles.
The amount of energy I expended keeping that secret was exhausting.
Tonight, Elizabeth is back.
Here now, David Muir and Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us tonight. And let me just say, it is great to have you back.
It's great to be back, and thank you for all your support, and thank you to all our viewers as well. It really meant a lot to me, and I'll be talking a little bit later in the program about where I've been and the work I've done, and share a little bit about that.
And a member of your family is here tonight.
I know.
This is a very brave evening for you, and we know that, and we'll get to all that a little later. I know you want us to start with the news first.
Let's go.
So let's begin. We begin here tonight with that headline that rocked the city of Houston this week, the pretty middle school teacher and the boy whose parents trusted the teacher to help him. Instead, what would follow would be any parent's nightmare. Tonight, the parents and that boy sitting down only with 2020.
Are new developments in the case of a local middle school teacher caught having sex with a child. Late today, she received her punishment.
It's the story thrust back into the spotlight just this week after the first headlines shocked much of Houston. A parent's nightmare come true.
He's a child. That's what the law said.
A married school teacher they had trusted with their son was having sex with him. And tonight, for the first time, the secret that began in classroom 308 is finally unraveling. Alex and Jenny Pillay will never forget that first day at Memorial Middle School, one of the top schools in Houston, bringing their son to that front door, newly adopted, rescued from distant relatives from a life of poverty in Costa Rica. They began the adoption process when he was just 9 years old. It took 5 years to get him here.
Do you remember the trip to go get him, to bring him to America?
Oh, definitely. And he was so excited. Oh my God, this is my new life.
His new life in America?
In America. We arrived to Houston, and he was so surprised, amazing, looking at the buildings, how tall the buildings were, and he was so happy to be at his new home.
And soon, his new school.
I walked Jimmy to school. He was very nervous.
Do you remember your first day of school?
I didn't like it.
So you walked into that school not speaking a word of English?
No. I knew just hello and that's it.
You said to Jimmy, you will survive this.
Oh, yes.
It will get better.
It will get better.
The boy came to America with big dreams of playing soccer, of college one day. One of his first trips to NASA with his new parents. This is the young face of the boy who was also getting help at his new school. There was an English teacher assigned to give him that extra help with his classes, 28-year-old Catherine Camille Murray, who was married. Some of the boys thought Ms. Murray was pretty. Do you remember the first time you met her?
Yes.
Was she nice?
Yeah, she was nice. She started helping me a lot with my homework.
Jimmy found comfort in her classroom.
You would take all your other classes and then you would go to her at the end of the day for help or sometime during the day for help?
Yes. I started liking the feeling that I was feeling for her.
The teacher and student were growing closer.
When do you start hearing about Ms. Murray?
We went to the open house, and I said, hello, Ms. Murray, I'm Jimmy's mom. And immediately she looked at me and says, oh, Jimmy's my favorite student, and he's so well behaved.
Really? That struck you as strange?
I thought it was kind of strange.
And what was Jimmy saying about Ms. Murray at home?
Oh, she's so pretty. And I said, yeah, she's a pretty lady.
Hey, every kid goes through that. Has a crush on the teacher.
So you're thinking this is our adolescent son?
This is an adolescent son with just a simple crush. That's it, but nothing of it.
And in all of his classes, Jimmy is getting A's and B's.
So it was like, okay, so she's actually doing good for him, helping him.
But there was more. At school, Jimmy says there was something about the way she would look at him.
When you would walk into that room, would she smile?
She loved me different.
She looked at you differently.
Yes.
Is that when you sensed that she had feelings for you too?
Yes.
Before Christmas break, he writes a note revealing his love for his teacher, but then tears it up into pieces and gave it to her to throw away. Instead, she keeps the letter, and when he returns to school, surprise.
She said, I read your letter.
She put it back together.
Yes. And she told me, I really like you, for real. And so, I really like you. And she told me, I know, but we can have anything.
She told you
Yes.
couldn't have anything.
Jimmy is staying after school nearly every day now. Then one afternoon, he doesn't come home from school. His parents frantically begin looking for him through the empty hallways everywhere, even classroom 308. His father finds the custodian.
And we saw the custodian lady, and she said, they were just here, they left.
There was no sign of him. Suddenly, Jimmy appears at home.
Holding his arm like this.
With blood.
He had no words. And as soon as he spoke, it just started crying.
He would cry for nearly an hour and then offer a story. Jimmy told his parents he'd been in the car with Ms. Murray and they had an argument.
He just told us that he was in the car, he jumped out of the car.
So it's like, what happened? And the only thing he said was, I told her that I like her.
And my wife and I are looking at each other, okay, so this sounds like a lover's quarrel.
They immediately reach out to Ms. Murray, but she mentions nothing about Jimmy in her car.
So at that moment, you think there's something going on.
It's going on. She is lying.
They tell Ms. Murray their son needs to be taken out of her class. She says she'll move him. Weeks go by, life at home returns to normal.
Every night, you sit down at the dinner table.
We all four sit in the dinner.
Yeah.
And he'd stop talking about
Yes.
Ms.
We
Murray.
stopped talking about this
We
part.
go, okay.
We thought it was over.
But it was far from over. They were now talking on Facebook. Jimmy says he messaged Ms. Murray that he wanted to kiss her, and that she replied, I want to see that.
She wanted you to kiss her.
Yes. Monday, I came to my school early. I walked straight to her, and I kissed her. When I stopped kissing her, I walked to my first class.
You were thinking to yourself you had to get back to her.
Yes.
So you went back to her. You asked her how she felt about what happened.
Yes, and she told me, okay, I want you to kiss me again, so that's when I kissed her again.
That's when everything started.
Yes.
Physically.
Mm-hmm.
Did she ever say to you, this is wrong?
No, after I kissed her.
And tonight here, look at this. For the first time on 2020, the school surveillance tapes showing the teacher meeting privately in her classroom behind closed doors over and over again with her middle school student. She can be seen scanning the hallway, sometimes walking out with Jimmy. Other days, they leave in different directions. While at home, what Jimmy's parents think is a welcome sign, the school dance. And Jimmy wants to go with the friends he's now made. No sign of Ms. Murray.
And are you hoping that Jimmy's going to find a girl his own age to have a crush on?
Of course.
Of course.
But the girl waiting at the dance, Ms. Murray, across the street from the school, in the church parking lot. His dad had no idea.
I dropped him off, and he saw me leaving, and then he moved over to meet her across the street.
And she's waiting in, of all places, the church across the street.
Yes.
So you would talk to Ms. Murray during the day. You said, my dad's going to bring me to the dance, and the two of you had a plan.
Yes.
The boy she'd been warned to stay clear of, she was now taking away from that school dance. She had her own playlist. Tonight, 2020, obtaining the video, the images the night she checked into a nearby hotel, then bringing her teenage student through that side door.
Did anything happen in the hotel?
Yes. We have sexual relations.
You had sex with her.
Yes.
A secret the teacher helped Jimmy keep, but not for long. Suddenly, a disturbing phone call from the principal.
He confided in
Yeah.
another teacher that he had kissed Ms. Murray.
Yes.
That I kissed Ms. Murray.
Yes.
That's correct.
And then the selfies, the photographs they took of themselves kissing, images that would break a mother's heart. And tonight, for the first time here, we see them after becoming a key part of this case. Then another major blow. Jimmy and his mother sitting together when suddenly the mother's cell phone goes off. She'd let Jimmy borrow it, and that teacher, Ms. Murray, was now texting Jimmy. But the mother was receiving the message. The teacher's message, you know I love you. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to be happy together. I miss you. A mother looking down at her cell phone, stunned.
I said, Jimmy, I need to go to the restroom. I had to put water on my face. And I said, okay, this is not happening.
And And that mother had not even heard the worst of it. When we come back, all of this, suddenly, it's much closer to home.
He says, Mama has something to tell you. That smile you have in your face is going to go away when I tell you this.
You won't believe where this goes next.
2020 continues with David Muir.
It's a hall of shame filled with unlikely faces, female teachers entrusted to protect, who instead preyed on their male students. Names like Deborah LaFave, convicted of abusing a 14-year-old. Mary Kay Latorno, who had sex with her 12-year-old student. She famously told the world their love was real.
I felt a very deep love for him.
And tonight, at the head of that infamous class now, Ms. Murray, 28, married, and sleeping with the boy who had just come to America with his new parents and his new dreams. And for that mom who so tried to protect him, it was all crashing down. That text that came to her phone, the teacher, thinking she was texting Jimmy, saying, I love you, I miss you. And now her younger son at home was troubled too. Something wasn't right.
So your youngest son isn't leaving his room?
No.
For days.
And when the younger brother, just 12 years old, finally emerged from his bedroom, his mother could not believe what he told her.
Fernando came to me and says, Mama has something to tell you. I said, what is it? He says, that smile you have in your face is going to go away when I tell you this. She was here. I said, what do you mean she? Who is she? He says, Catherine Moore was here. I said, what? He says, Mom, they had sex.
The little brother had stumbled in on them while looking for the family dog.
He says, I saw her bra and I saw a couple of condoms on the floor.
The teacher had been in their own house.
This notion that this teacher would come into your home and get into your son's bed with him.
I mean, this is just sick.
This was now an outraged mother on a mission.
And I said, I need to prove this person was in my house. That's it. She just crossed the line. I put some gloves and I took everything I can take from my son's bedroom. All the covers, pillows, and I called the police. And I said, okay, do the DNA. Let's prove she was there or not. And it was positive.
Yeah, DNA from those sheets proved that she was there.
This is the same teacher who weeks and weeks before you had called the school and said, keep her away from my son.
Yes.
The same teacher they had once thanked for helping their son who spoke so little English.
I keep sending emails. Thank you for taking care of my son. Thank you for care about my son.
Now armed with the teacher's DNA, the case moves quickly. 15-year-old Jimmy and his 12-year-old brother suddenly swept into it, sitting across from investigators. Jimmy determined to protect his teacher.
So you've been brought to a room where investigators were asking you what happened.
My brother went first, and then me. I started lying. I started saying, I just kissed her.
The investigators said to you they already knew the truth.
Yes. And I said, okay, and I started telling the truth. I said, yes, I have a relationship with her, and we have sex.
Ms. Murray is quickly arrested and charged with sexual assault of a child. She's released on bail, but ordered to stay away from Jimmy. And there is relief at Jimmy's house. He's now back at school, captain of the soccer team, and the family is back at the dinner table. Months would go by. He begins to open up to his mother.
He started to tell you piece by piece how
details, very hard details for Mom to hear.
He tells her that it wasn't just their house or that hotel, that the sex had all started in that classroom, room 308. And not only does he tell his mom, he tells police, who start scouring that surveillance video all over again, looking for even more evidence. And there it is, Jimmy leaving Ms. Murray's classroom on the afternoon he says they first had sex. Just 6 minutes later, watch as Ms. Murray comes out of that same room.
School surveillance showed that they were leaving her classroom on Tuesday, February 7th at 5:15 p.m., and the school records showed that school is regularly dismissed at 3:30 p.m.
Ms. Murray is now charged with 2 more counts of sexual assault on a child and 1 count of an improper relationship with a student. She is ordered now to wear an ankle bracelet. And as the months go by, those parents are learning more and more about how they say Ms. Murray lured their son in. Jimmy's dad reads to me the notes prosecutors say the teacher wrote to their son.
So this is a poem she wrote to your son.
That is correct.
And what does it say?
It says, because of you, I crave, I desire, I hope, I learn, I love, and because of you, I do not hate myself.
This is from the teacher
This is from the teacher to my son.
And after all they'd been through, all they had learned, their son suddenly seemed to be pulling away yet again. Unbelievably, it was back on. Jimmy had started secretly seeing Ms. Murray.
Were you thinking to yourself, I shouldn't be doing this?
Yes.
But when you saw her?
All the feelings that I felt for her came back.
His parents now suspect that even with that ankle bracelet and facing a possible 20 years in prison, that Ms. Murray was still toying with their son's emotions.
These parents were in tune with their son.
Absolutely.
They hire a private investigator to follow him. And that very night, sitting out front, the investigator sees Jimmy leap through a window in the middle of the night, a friend driving him. That investigator taking us back along that fateful route.
I was following down the freeway. I'm thinking, wow, this is really happening. Wow, those parents knew exactly what they were saying.
They knew this teacher hadn't stopped.
I said, okay.
The private eye suddenly finding herself in front of Ms. Murray's father's house.
How quickly do you call Houston police?
Once I saw Jimmy get out of the car and go inside, I picked up the phone and called the HPD number and told them that I was working on a case involving Ms. Murray, and they recognized the name instantly.
She calls Jimmy's parents, too.
As we're driving to Ms. Murray's father's house, I'm calling the police. I'm saying, I'm the father. This is the case number, and when we got there were 7 police cars.
Now the parents, the private eye, and the police in a dramatic confrontation surrounding the house, guns drawn. Inside, the teacher and the middle school student.
They got in the bullhorn and said, Miss Catherine Murray,
She was
this
now
is
opening the door.
police, Houston police, open the door.
When we come back. The story that began in classroom 308 in this Houston middle school involving the 28-year-old married Ms. Murray and the student she met at 14 at the beginning of the school year was about to take yet another dramatic turn. The adopted boy who spoke not a word of English was getting help from her at the start of the year, and soon much more inside that classroom. Prosecutors say she was writing love notes to the boy.
Write with me. You're ready, my muse. I think we could create something amazing together.
You are already my muse, she says.
Yes. He's providing an illusion to him. He's given him basically a fantasy.
But now that fantasy was meeting reality. The teacher, in a standoff with police, caught at her father's house with her teenage student inside. The home surrounded. Ms. Murray has no choice but to give herself up.
Were you there?
Yes.
When she came out of that house?
Oh, yeah, we were there. I want to make
there.
sure she'd see us.
Yeah.
Was she in handcuffs?
Oh, yeah.
She was in handcuffs.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
they had like 16
Yes.
police.
Finally, for the parents, relief that Ms. Murray was locked up and away from Jimmy. But then the new challenge, a son who was falling into a dangerous depression, feeling he was the one guilty for putting the teacher there.
Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes, a lot.
What were you thinking?
That maybe if I was going to kill myself, they forgot about this.
You were thinking if you killed yourself,
yeah.
everyone would forget about this.
Yes.
Alex, what's the hardest part for you?
You're dropping off your kid at a psychiatric ward. He's trying to kill himself. He believes his life is worthless. And you feel so helpless. It's a feeling that no parent should go through.
Tonight, Jimmy says he's doing better, telling me he can finally smile again.
Do you now see that there is a future?
I know that there is a future.
You know there's a future?
Yes.
And late this week, the future of Ms. Murray decided.
Former teacher in Houston was sentenced.
Former teacher in the Spring Branch ISD learned her fate today.
That blonde teacher who the boys in school once thought was pretty, with a changed appearance. She's already pleaded guilty and now about to learn her fate.
I think she crossed the line as far as you can go. It's a huge violation of trust. All of us as parents have a right to know that when we send our children to school, they're not just going to learn, they're going to be safe.
The judge sentencing Ms. Murray. She'll spend 1 year in jail and then probation. She was told she cannot see Jimmy, and she gave up her teaching license. She will also have to register as a sex offender. And then everyone in that courtroom saw that smile to her family as she left the court. And when Jimmy's parents, sitting right there, heard 1 year in jail, they were aghast.
Had this been a 27-year-old man abusing a 15-year-old girl, the judgment there would have been completely different.
What has she done to your son's life?
I think it took his innocence away, because that was his first time having sex. He robbed him of his childhood.
Ms. Murray, her family, and her defense team have repeatedly turned down requests from 2020 to talk about the case. They cite her ongoing treatment for bipolar disorder. Her attorney only saying this as he left the courthouse.
We will respect the family's request to keep this private, and that's all we have to say.
What's been the hardest part for you?
It's like you had a boy with all the dreams, and then you have a boy thinking that his life is over. So instead of looking him going to a soccer game and be so happy, this is nothing in your life. We brought you here to be happy, to have a future.
They have repeatedly told their son he should have never crossed that line, and that regardless of what that teacher told him and wrote to him in those notes, none of it was right.
Do you still love her?
Yes.
In the same way?
No.
Do you think you'll see her again one day?
Maybe.
Tonight, with 1 year in jail for that teacher, there is still fear at Jimmy's house. Fear that the teacher, now getting divorced, will try to see their son again. That same teacher who first met Jimmy around the time this photo was taken, his first trip to NASA, in his first few weeks of school. That young face, now forever changed. And a mom who tonight says she will never give up, trying to protect her son.
And we don't know what is going to happen. And that's the biggest fear I have.
Your biggest fear is that?
Oh yeah, that's the biggest. He is still a child, and he was a child. And that's what we're asking for, justice.
We thank those parents for sharing their story with us. And so what do you make of the sentence for that teacher tonight? Tweet me, use the hashtag ABC 2020. And next here, the 2020 investigation tonight, hundreds of parents who put their trust in a fertility clinic just now finding out who really fathered their children when we come back.
Next, the sperm donor scandal. A lab technician switching father's samples to his own DNA.
This wasn't a mistake. This was done intentionally.
When we return.
How did a beautiful girl grow up with loving parents and have so little in common with them? Not their looks, not their skills, and that's just the start of a mystery now being solved, and all leading back to a strange man in a fertility clinic, a man who could have deceived hundreds of families in the worst possible way. Here's Cecilia Vega.
It started off as a hobby, researching family history.
So it gets addictive. Yep, and boy, did I get bit by the bug.
But what Pam Branham uncovered would reveal an unthinkable secret about her 21-year-old daughter. It involves a fertility clinic and a monster unleashed from the grave.
Stunning story, bizarre story. They are warning others about
Convicted felon.
It shakes your world, absolutely, because everything that you knew to be true all of a sudden wasn't.
You know, you're like pinching yourself going, this is like the worst dream I've ever had. I'm going to wake up, and it didn't happen.
It happened.
It happened.
It happened in Salt Lake City. Newlyweds John and Pam Branham are trying to start a family with no success. So as a last resort, they go to a fertility clinic here on the campus of the University of Utah. A friendly lab, but something about the lab tech doesn't sit right with John.
I remember handing him the sperm specimen, and he gave me this just sort of evil smile. Just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I thought, whoa.
John's reaction is soon forgotten, though, with the arrival 9 months later of a beautiful baby girl, Annie.
Couldn't have been happier. Not a creature was stirring.
Flash through the years.
First steps. Look at her go.
And the memories.
She's musically inclined, and we always kind of wondered where that came from.
Annie grows into a beautiful, bright young woman, a college whiz kid who studies astrophysics and surprises her parents with her gift for math.
I barely made it through Calculus 1. Well, in Annie's second year of college, she was doing Calculus 3, making A's, and I'm thinking, there's a recessive gene at work there, right?
With her nest now empty, Pam picks up a hobby and gets hooked on researching the family tree.
She'd be up to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning doing this.
These days, anyone can stick a swab inside their cheek, go online, and for a few bucks, discover relatives and health histories they never knew they had. Pam Branham swabbed the whole family.
I thought it was really interesting how it tells you about your health, it tells you where you come from.
As expected, when the results come back,
You can see how it's totally lit up.
Pam finds that Annie shares 50% of her mom's DNA. But what about her dad?
And it said that they shared 0 DNA. I was in a panic. I was in a complete panic.
Annie walked through the door, didn't say a word, gave me a big hug, started sobbing.
I think it took a very long time for it to sink in.
What was it that sunk in?
Trying to comprehend what it meant that he wasn't my biological father, and then who is.
The Branhams say they couldn't get answers from the university. It would take a DNA detective to get to the bottom of it.
They wanted to know what her biological heritage was on her paternal side.
Finding biological fathers is a specialty of C.C. Moore, a genetic genealogist in Southern California. Desperate for answers, Pam sends her an email.
This is right up my alley.
She tells Pam to send Annie's DNA to multiple online databases.
And in this type of work, we always say if we can find a second cousin or a predicted second cousin, we're pretty much in business. We can usually solve the case.
Moore's hunch pays off, and the plot thickens with a single match between Annie's DNA and this total stranger in Minnesota, Carla Evans. What this retired school secretary knows will blow open the whole story.
She asked me if I had a relative that might have donated sperm, and I said yes, as a matter of fact, I did.
And I said, well, can you tell me where he lives?
And I said, well, he lived in Salt Lake City a lot, and I know he used to work for a fertility clinic there.
And I thought, okay, that's it. That's it.
That relative was Carla's cousin, Tom Lippert. Pam and Carla exchange photos, and suddenly, pieces of the puzzle start falling into place.
When I first saw Annie's graduation picture, it looks almost identical to Tom's graduation picture. When I saw that photo, I just knew that Tom was the father.
She also recalls some things that might explain Annie's interest in music and her college ambitions.
Well, Tom was very talented. He was very intelligent. He went to Notre Dame Law School. He was also musical.
And I looked at those pictures and I recognized him.
You recognized him?
He was the man at the clinic. I could picture all those baby pictures behind him, the ones that he was so proud of.
Oh, he made a big deal out of the fact that these were all the families that I've helped conceive.
This is so creepy. Picturing him sitting next to that wall is chilling.
And I just thought to myself, this wasn't a mistake. This was done intentionally.
But the story dead ends in a cemetery. Tom Lippert died in 1999. Case closed. Until, that is, Carla Evans drops a bombshell.
And said, Pam, there's something I need to tell you, and I want to be totally upfront with you about who my cousin was and what he did.
Tom kidnapped this young woman.
That's right. Tom Lippert was a convict, a kidnapper who gained national attention in 1975, sentenced to 6 years in prison for abducting a young woman. The details would unhinge everyone. He held her for 3 weeks, sometimes in a metal-studded box.
For me, that was as devastating almost as finding out.
After getting out of prison, Lippert married a nurse, Jean, and settled in this quiet Salt Lake neighborhood. He terrorized the neighborhood kids.
We were so scared we would walk on the other side of the road.
Tessa Murdoch says Lippert threw rocks, broke windows, and even made the local news.
Did you throw these rocks last night?
Absolutely not.
I never knew why he hated kids so much.
Ironic, because hating kids didn't stop him from conceiving them, swapping his sperm for that of patients while working as a lab tech in the fertility clinic at the University of Utah. At the time, the clinic did not do criminal background checks on prospective employees.
We are deeply sorry for any anxiety this has caused to our patients.
Finally, this week, the university admitted that many lab records were destroyed. They can only guess how many sperm samples were handled or mishandled by Tom Lippert. Cases could soon be coming out of the woodwork.
Let's just say 1,000 might be an estimate of people who might be affected.
DNA detective C.C. Moore created a blog that's already gotten responses from at least 5 more possible Lippert offspring, who'd be Annie's half-siblings.
Do you think there are other families out there right now who were duped just like you?
I know it. I know without a doubt. I'm starting to hear from them.
I wouldn't wish this on any other family.
Still, the Branhams know their turmoil is far outweighed by the one beautiful blessing that came out of it, their daughter, Annie.
What have you learned about yourself, about your family?
That we're just the same.
My dad is my dad, regardless of whether or not he's biologically related to me. He's the one who raised me.
When we return, Elizabeth Vargas speaking out for the very first time.
I started thinking, well, I'll only drink, on weekends. I'll only drink, 2 glasses of wine a night.
Battling and overcoming addiction. Next.
And now a very personal note about my friend who is back with us after a brave journey.
This morning, Elizabeth's return on Good Morning America.
And we are thrilled to be welcoming back Elizabeth Vargas to ABC News.
After bravely tackling a very personal struggle, she shared with viewers something she knows many families have also faced.
I guess the best way to do this is to get right to it. You're an alcoholic.
I am. I am an alcoholic. It took me a long time to admit that to myself. It took me a long time to admit it to my family, but I am. And I think part of the reason it's hard to admit is I had a lot of shame and a lot of guilt about it.
It must have taken so much effort to keep that secret.
The amount of energy I expended keeping that secret and keeping this problem hidden from view, hidden from my family, hidden from friends, from colleagues, was exhausting.
And when Elizabeth took time off to get help, her private battle suddenly became a very public one.
I didn't choose to go public with this. Somebody else made that decision for me. But in hindsight and in retrospect, maybe it's a blessing because it relieves me of that secrecy and that burden of walking around through life living behind a facade, which is what you do.
She says the alcoholism stems in part from another struggle, one that has shadowed her since childhood. Elizabeth's mother told me she remembers it too.
Did you see the anxiety attacks as a little girl?
Yes, I clearly saw them. And every morning when I would leave to go to work, she would cry and beg me not to go. And it was hard for her, it was heartbreaking for me. And her daddy was gone and she didn't want her mommy to leave. So I think the anxiety started then and probably carried with her forever in one form or another.
Even with her steady hand at the anchor desk, Elizabeth now says the anxiety, the panic were always close behind.
And at some point along the way, I dealt with that anxiety and with the stress that anxiety brought by starting to drink. And it slowly escalated and got worse and worse. I should have realized it was a problem way back when Zachary, my oldest son, was born. And he used to call my nightly glass of wine Mommy's juice. And I thought that was hysterical. It didn't occur to me that that was a problem. And it didn't really get to be a huge problem until the last few years. And I actually started reporting on it. I've done like a half dozen 2020 hour-long specials on drinking, specifically women in drinking and mothers in drinking. These women who opened their homes and their private lives to us, letting us in on the most intimate and embarrassing moments.
Elizabeth says over time, she realized she shared something in common with many of the brave people she had interviewed.
You make all sorts of deals with yourself. I started thinking, well, I'll only drink, on weekends. I'll only drink, 2 glasses of wine a night. I'll only drink, I won't drink on nights before I have to get up and do Good Morning America. But those deals never work, and you're only fooling yourself.
Perhaps fooling herself, but she says not her husband, singer-songwriter Mark Cohn.
My husband knew I had a problem.
What did he say?
You have a problem. You're an alcoholic. And it made me really angry. But he was right. And it took me a long time to finally accept that. It took a long time. I mean, denial is huge for any alcoholic, especially for any functioning alcoholic.
She says the denials all came to an end on a Saturday afternoon when she arrived at a shoot for work.
When I got out of the car, I realized, what am I doing? I am in no shape to do this. And that's when I knew I need to get help. I went to a rehab that specializes in treating trauma. They don't just deal with drinking or drug use, in the case of others there. They deal with why you're drinking. What is it you're trying to cover up? What is it you're trying to numb?
A devoted mom, she was very aware of the toll on her family, on her boys.
And we explained that I was going away to get better. And they came and visited me, and they got to see where I was staying and meet the doctors there and ride a horse.
She came home before doctors wanted her to, and soon realized she had more work to do.
And I went back and finished and stayed until the doctors there said I was ready to come back. This isn't what I want to be known for, but I'm really proud of what I did. And I feel so much better now, not having to walk around with this enormous burden.
Always.
And this evening, also watching her parents, Mom and Dad rooting for their daughter in her brave fight to get back.
You've been with Elizabeth as she returns to work this week, and you've seen how all of us are quite proud of her. And I was just curious how a mom feels watching her return.
Coming forward like this is not easy, and I think we're especially proud of that.
She said that she never wanted to be the face of this, but that if in doing this she could help just one person out there.
You know, David, we heard from so many people after it became public what she was dealing with. We were really astonished, and we're very proud of her for saying, I'm going to talk about it and tell people what I've been through, how it happened, and how I'm back here.
And then get back to work.
Get back to work.
In typical Elizabeth fashion.
In typical Elizabeth fashion, right, yeah.
It's always embarrassing to have the entire world know your deepest, darkest secret. And yet, at the same time, I think it'll be a relief. I think in the long term it will be ultimately a blessing because I can be free about it. I'm not hiding anymore, and that's hard, but it's also a relief.
So that you can be free about it. And you heard me talk to your mom about it right there. That's something that you had said to me in the very beginning about all this, which is that you had never wanted to be the face of really anything like this. But you said this, and it was powerful, that if you could help one person, then it would be worth it.
I didn't seek help for a long time because I had so much shame and guilt around this. So if speaking out maybe makes somebody feel less shameful about it.
A beloved taxi driver.
Raphael was a hardworking guy. He always tried to do better and better and better.
Is murdered in cold blood.
That's when they observed a body inside of the trunk.
There were 9 gunshots. That's not an accident.
We had no leads, we had no suspects, had no idea who could have done this to him.
Police uncover a sinister trail of motives.
A lot of people was jealous of Raphael.
Raphael tended to like the ladies a little bit.
Raphael had approximately $2,000 in his vehicle.
But struggled to find suspects.
People were asking, do we have to be scared? Is there a murder out there killing us Hispanics?
We noticed on his license plate of his vehicle, there appeared to be a blood stain.
Until the bizarre truth turns the case on its head.
We're calling him through the loudspeaker, trying to get him to come out of the house, which turned into an hours-long standoff.
When that fingerprint came back with a second person, it really blew it wide open.
We knew he was at the scene.
That was a bombshell. That was a game changer in terms of the criminal prosecution. Ultimately, to come back to these two people was something that we never saw coming.
Rogers County, Oklahoma, a quiet rural district north of Tulsa's city limits.
Rogers County is just a great, tight-knit community.
It's an agricultural community, a very wholesome, family-oriented community.
That all changes in the early hours of May 1st, 2015, when a truck driver sees something unusual beneath a bridge.
Our dispatch center received a call of a vehicle partially submerged in the Caney River off Highway 169.
Police and firefighters arrive at the scene in minutes and cordon off the area. Emergency crews check to see if anyone is trapped inside.
The news media was there, and it was being broadcasted over live TV.
As the car is towed onto the riverbank, its trunk pops open.
That's when they initially observed a body inside of the trunk.
At that point, we knew we had a serious crime at hand.
Rogers County Sheriff's detectives arrive and begin their investigation.
When I arrived on scene, I observed a Hispanic male inside of the trunk.
These pockets look like they've been rummaged through.
Only when detectives move the victim's shirt do they realize the violent nature of the attack.
He appeared to have several gunshot wounds to his chest area.
There were 9 gunshots. That's not an accident. 9 gunshots is intentional.
Somebody wanted to make sure that he did not survive his injuries.
The first question facing detectives is who is the man in the trunk?
We did not locate any type of identification or any wallet or anything that a normal person would have in his pockets.
So it made it very hard for us to identify who he was. We were taking photographs of his tattoos and unique markings on his body.
Inside of the vehicle, we found some cell phones.
As the car was submerged, we got lucky that one of the cell phones was placed on the dash and it was fully intact, still operational.
The detectives and forensics team comb the riverbank for further clues.
We noticed a large amount of blood, and we suspected that was the area that the victim was initially shot. Well, near that pool of blood, we also found some shell casings consistent with the size of bullet wounds inside the deceased's body.
A few feet away, detectives notice more clues.
There was several beer cans and a cigarette butt and a piece of tissue.
I was told that a family member had showed up and seen his brother's car on the news, and he said, yes, that's my brother's car.
The young man's brother is Rafael Hernandez Torres, a taxi owner serving customers in Tulsa's Hispanic community.
I showed him a photograph of a tattoo that I had taken from the victim's body. That Oscar immediately identified the tattoo belonging to his brother and then began sobbing and crying because at that point we told him that his brother had been murdered.
It broke my heart. When I seen the pictures, it felt like the whole world just kind of ended.
Oscar called me. When I found out Rafael got shot, I didn't even know how to react. I was just shocked. I was like, how?
Rafael Hernandez Torres was born outside Mexico City on October 22, 1976.
As a kid, he was a rebel.
Growing up, he was always riding his bike from town to town.
He loved to go and get to know people from other places, get to know other cities. He just loved to travel everywhere.
When Rafael was 20 years old, his parents moved him and his siblings to the U.S. As one of the oldest sons, Rafael helped support the family.
It was difficult to move to a different place that we didn't know, and we had to start from zero.
Raphael was the big brother. And as soon as we got here, Raphael told us to get straight to school, learn the language, and just keep on going. Raphael was a hardworking guy. He always tried to do better and better and better.
As a young man, Raphael's warm personality attracted others.
He was so friendly with everyone, especially ladies.
Raphael was enterprising too, turning his passion for travel into a career.
Raphael started his taxi business with one car. From there, it kept on going and going.
Raphael was known in Tulsa's Hispanic community as someone willing to help anyone in need.
Raphael cared about everybody. If he saw you down, he'll try to help you. If he saw you homeless, he'll get you a room and get you a shower and help you out.
He knew people who didn't have anything to eat, and he helped them out. Raphael had a great heart.
What would lead anyone to take Raphael's life so violently on that riverbank?
Everybody knew him. Everybody liked him. He did a service to his community, always gave back to his community. At this point, we're thinking, why would somebody kill him?
At the crime scene, detectives ask Oscar and Juan what they know about Raphael's last hours before his body was discovered in the river.
Raphael called me and told me that he was going to Texas, but the next day he didn't call me, which was strange because he was always calling me every time he went out of state.
Police ask if Oscar and Juan know why anyone might want to kill their brother.
We learned that Raphael was known to carry approximately $2,000 on him at all times.
Whoever did this took his ID, took his wallet, took any money he may have had. So that led to the possible motive that Raphael had been killed for the money.
Oscar gives the detectives one more useful piece of information.
Oscar told us that some of Raphael's vehicles had been vandalized where Raphael ran his business.
A lot of people was jealous of Raphael because he was really successful in the business that he was doing.
Had the beloved taxi driver made a lethal enemy in his community?
We had no leads, we had no suspects, had no idea who could have done this to him.
This wasn't just a disagreement or something. It was a very violent act.
I had a lot of questions about Raphael. Why? Who? Why would they kill him? What did he do?
This is not a random killing. This is someone who targeted Raphael and wanted him to die.
Coming up, detectives uncover a tangled web of romantic interests.
Not only does he call her frequently and go by and see her, but I know he bought her flowers.
She had an unusual relationship with her ex-husband. They both still slept in the same bed.
So a scorned husband, that could fit right in with that. Now we're starting to think this could be a motive.
And a surprising lead sends the case in a new direction.
We were shocked when we found a second individual's fingerprint at the scene.
After discovering Rafael Hernandez Torres shot dead and stuffed into the trunk of his own taxicab, detectives are trying to establish if it was a robbery gone wrong or if he'd been targeted by someone with a grudge.
We were trying to see if we could locate who had vandalized Raphael's vehicles, see if there's anyone that had a motive or a reason to harm or murder Raphael.
Detectives are also on the lookout for vehicles spotted near the bridge on the night of the murder.
We established a tip line, and we got that number out to the news outlets.
We received multiple tips from passerbys describing that they saw a truck on the side of the highway, a black SUV on the side of the highway, and then a silver car on the side of the highway.
So we initially started looking for vehicles that could match that description in the hopes that we could run a name.
Next, investigators head to the heart of Tulsa's Latino district, where Raphael based his business.
The area of 21st and Garnett in Tulsa is a predominantly Latino community. Right at the heart of that is Santa Cecilia Plaza.
There's grocery stores, there's hair salons, ice cream parlors, where the Hispanic community gathers with their families.
The Plaza Santa Cecilia, it's a place to go. if you're Hispanic most of the time. Something's always happening.
Raphael parked his vehicles outside of the Mercandito and also right next to the ice cream shop.
Raphael spent every day walking around talking to these people.
Raphael gave rides to people that needed them. He helped translate, and he's just well known in his community as a person always giving back and helping. Very kind and loving person.
Raphael always said that's what he loved to do. He loved, helping out people.
Detectives canvass Raphael's friends at the plaza.
They were shocked that he was murdered and killed. And they were heartbroken.
Was there anyone who had a reason to want him dead?
It was well known in that community that Raphael had money, that he carried money with him.
We spoke with Roman, who was considered a maintenance man around the area.
We spoke with Felipe, who owned a grocery store, as well as Adon, who ran the ice cream cart.
Adon came into contact with Raphael multiple times in a week as he pushed that cart up and down those businesses.
We actually learned that people seemed to really like Raphael. No one really seemed to have a motive to want to harm him.
As detectives continue searching the plaza for leads, they gain access to Raphael's cell phone records.
So initially, we had the physical phone. I drafted a search warrant to try to extract as much data as possible from that phone. Raphael was talking to multiple people between 9:15 and 9:30. So we know that he's alive at that point, or he wouldn't be answering his phone. And then after that time period, he doesn't answer any more phone calls.
It's always important when someone has been murdered to find out who they talked to last. One of the numbers that we had identified on Raphael's phone belonged to a female named Letty. Letty worked at a laundromat near where Raphael kept his vehicles. We found out through Oscar that Raphael and Letty may have had some type of relationship. Raphael would frequent Letty's place of business at the laundromat and would go by to see her.
Not only does he call her frequently and go by and see her, but I know he bought her flowers. He took little gifts up to her. Or he took her to Dallas one time for one of his fairs. They drove to Dallas and then drove right back.
There's one more thing about Letty that gets the officers' attention.
We also discovered that Letty was married.
As officers dig into this new lead, Raphael's autopsy results come in.
Raphael was shot 3 times in the front and 6 times in the back.
There's a mindset behind somebody shooting somebody that many times. It tells you that this is a crime of passion. It's not just something that just happened.
So a scorned husband, that could fit right in with that. Now we're starting to think this could be a motive.
Had Letty's husband killed Raphael in a jealous rage? Detectives decide to get some answers from Letty.
So we went to interview Letty, and Letty was not very forthcoming.
We had talked to her about her relationship with Raphael. What is that? What is that relationship? She told us that they were just friends.
Letty did deny being in a relationship with Raphael.
We learned after speaking with Letty that she had not been truthful to us. She did not provide a correct date of birth, did not provide her correct address.
At the station, detectives search Letty's name in the police database.
We later learned Letty's true address and her true date of birth. In doing so, we discovered that Letty had an outstanding warrant.
So obviously, we're on high alert with her because she's trying to deceive us.
Knowing that we've been lied to, we want to observe Letty's comings and goings, so we'd start conducting surveillance on Letty's home.
As detectives stake out Letty's home, their attention is drawn to a vehicle.
As we arrived, we saw a vehicle pull in that was almost an exact match to one of them mentioned in the tip line.
He's driving a black truck with a silver stripe on the back of it. And that was a possible vehicle we were looking for.
Detectives investigating the shooting of taxi driver Rafael Hernandez Torres believe his friendship with laundromat worker Letty could have sent her husband into a jealous rage.
First thing we decided to do when looking into Letty and her husband was we went to see who her husband's talking to.
Then a truck pulls up in Letty's driveway that matches a vehicle spotted near the scene of Rafael's murder.
So from there, we decided that we're going to make contact with the individual in the truck.
Officers confront the truck's owner, who claims to be the friend of Letty's husband, Mario.
Rogelio was basically crashing on Mario and Letty's couch, and they were putting him up for several weeks.
While speaking with Rogelio, we noticed on his license plate of his vehicle that there appeared to be a blood stain.
And there's a bloody fingerprint on the tag of the truck. Looking under the truck, and there's a piece of tissue that is kind of consistent with tissue that we found at the scene.
Is this the evidence detectives have been searching for? They search the house and see what else they can find.
During the search of that home, we did find a firearm inside the home. We submitted that to the state crime lab.
We had a victim that had been killed, put into the trunk of his vehicle, and then that vehicle was subsequently pushed into the river. It was a very narrow window of time that all this happened in. So in most of the investigators' mind, it's a very good possibility that there's two people involved in this. We got what we believe could be the possible vehicle. We have evidence that Letty's husband and this friend of his could be our suspects. And we're thinking this is the big crack to the case that we've been looking for.
Police bring Mario and Rogelio in for questioning. They ask Mario about Rafael. Had the taxi driver's advances on Letty made him a target?
Mario was familiar with that Rafael had bought his wife flowers and was known to stop by her place of business frequently, but he did not seem to be very upset by that.
Mario insists that he was never jealous of Rafael because he and Letty are divorced.
We had discovered that Letty had an unusual relationship with her ex-husband. They both still lived in the same house. They lived there with their children. They even slept in the same bed.
She was kind of out seeing people. He didn't care.
Mario also insists that he was at home asleep on the night of the murder. Rogelio gives the same alibi, insisting that he never left the house that night.
Their alibis were not really solid. We were worried about them being co-conspirators, so at the time, we weren't putting just a whole lot of stock into that.
Officers press Rogelio about the blood on his license plate.
But we talked to him about the blood on it, and he's got a good excuse for that. He cut his finger trying to put the tag on, and the bloody fingerprint is his blood. They were more than willing to provide their DNA and fingerprints to clear themselves.
Despite officers' suspicion of Mario and Rogelio, the lab results tell a different story.
We have DNA from the scene, and Rogelio and Mario don't possess that DNA.
The firearm inside the home did not match bullets that we found in Rafael.
And based on their phone numbers, they weren't at the scene. And we found zero evidence linking them to the crime, and that whole theory really started to fall apart quick. We were going back to the drawing board and we were starting over again.
We weren't sure on where to go from here other than talking to the community. It was very frustrating during this point.
With each passing day, pressure to solve the case is only increasing.
People were asking, do we have to be scared? Is there a murder out there killing us Hispanics?
My whole family was worried because they didn't want me doing the taxing business because they didn't want me to be the same as my brother.
At a crossroads in the investigation, police find a new way forward when they gain access to further cell phone records from the night of the murder.
One of the last contacts that Rafael had was a fare that was supposed to be getting a ride to Texas later that night, and Rafael never showed up.
But there's one other number that we know is also communicating with Rafael at around the time of his death.
Rafael was scheduled to pick up an individual and told him that he was going to be late because he had another job
Raphael had told him that he was going to help a friend who had gotten into an accident, and he was going to go translate for him to the police. We know that phone conversation took place around 9:15, and we believe that around 9:35 that Raphael was murdered.
Had Raphael been lured to his death by a call from someone he knew?
As we start diving into the call detail records on that phone number, we're able to follow the tower information and the location of that phone to the scene of the crime.
We were able to track Raphael's phone and the suspect phone, both going to the same area. However, Raphael's phone didn't leave, and the suspect phone went back to Tulsa.
This was very important to us because we knew that this was the possible killer that enticed Raphael to where he ultimately was shot and killed.
That's when we make the decision to focus everything on that number.
When police try to identify the phone's owner, there's a problem.
We get subscriber information for the phone number, and it comes back to a fictitious name.
The number was on a prepaid phone. It wasn't attached to any particular person.
That number was very important to us, especially after seeing the links that the individual went to hide their identity. We felt very strong that this number was going to belong to the killer.
And so investigators had to start looking at other ways of identifying who this phone belonged to.
We started to get call detail records for that number.
And they started contacting people that were in contact with the cell phone.
We were able to pinpoint a phone number from someone that talked to the suspect phone several times close to the time of the killing.
The phone number belongs to a man named Marco Lara.
But once we got the name for Marco Lara, we started running a criminal history check. And we find the drug charges, some firearms charges, stuff that we were interested in when you're looking for a violent killer. We knew that Marco knew who possessed our bad guy's phone number because he had been calling it.
Marco ran with some of the same people in that area that Raphael had contact with. And so we really felt like Marco was going to be a good spot to gain some information.
We went to the area of the plaza. Marco lived one street over, and we staked out his house. We saw a truck pull into his driveway, and he gets out of the driver's seat, and he walks into the house. So we get out, and we start covering exits to make sure that he isn't leaving. But that's when things went south.
2 weeks after cab driver Rafael Hernandez Torres is found shot dead in the trunk of his car, police are about to confront Marco Lara, a man they believe may know the identity of the killer.
We went there to make contact with Marco. He refused to come to the door.
We're calling him out through the loudspeaker, trying to get him to come out of the house, which turned into a standoff. We established a phone connection. There was a woman and children in the house, his family, and we're requesting for him to come out. And this goes on for a long time. Eventually, his wife and children come out, and we believe, that it's just him in the home.
There was a several-hour standoff with him in which he ultimately gave up and came outside and surrendered.
Police take Marco into custody and begin their interrogation.
Initially, we were thinking, this is a bad guy. He's got criminal history. He's actively resisting us coming and arresting him. We're thinking, okay, this could very well be an associate of our killer, if not possibly involved.
But cell tower phone records prove otherwise.
But once we got him arrested, we were able to determine that his phone as well had not traveled to the area where Raphael was killed.
If Marco is not involved, then why had he resisted arrest?
He has an outstanding warrant.
He's doing whatever he can to keep from going to jail.
No longer a direct suspect, Marco still has information valuable to the investigation.
So we had seized his phone. We had his phone. I typed in our suspect's number, and he said, that's him.
That number belonged to Roman Medrano, who lived in Tulsa.
Marco provided us the apartment complex that Roman lived at.
So knowing that Roman Medrano was the owner of that phone, we sat at the apartment complex and we figured out what apartment he was in.
And the next morning, we served a search warrant on that apartment.
When detectives search the apartment where Roman Medrano lives with his wife Blanca, they're surprised by what they find.
As we entered the residence, I noticed there was no furniture. It appeared that Roman maybe didn't have a lot of money. Maybe he was struggling to pay his bills.
We find that there's very little in the way of furniture, and it looks like things are being sold off. There's IRS paperwork scattered about.
Searching through Blanca's purse, officers make a discovery that raises their suspicions further.
There was approximately $2,000 in her purse. Rafael had approximately $2,000, in his vehicle. And now our suspect's wife has this large sum of money in her purse that is pretty close to the amount.
We had the one suspect number that we had determined to belong to Roman Medrano. At that point, we felt we had enough to bring Roman and his wife in for questioning.
At the police station, detectives first interview Roman's wife, Blanca.
Blanca initially denied knowing who Rafael was.
Blanca told us that she was not given a ride by Rafael, that Roman has nothing to do with this.
Then how to explain the $2,000 in her purse?
Roman doesn't have any money. He's worried about losing his roof over his head. It's well known in the community that Rafael carries lots of cash with him. So I don't think it was any secret that by killing Rafael that Roman could get a payday out of that. Blanca basically told us that Roman was with her the night of the homicide, that he's always home.
In another interview room, detectives question Roman.
Roman told us that he did not know Rafael, that he didn't know that his wife knew Rafael, that he had never been to the area where the homicide occurred. Roman denied every aspect of any knowledge of the case whatsoever.
Roman just heard of Rafael's taxi service and that he was, doing work in the Hispanic community.
But detectives have information that suggests a closer connection.
Shortly after the first interview with Marco, he reached out to us and gave us more information about Roman. Marco told us that he had overheard Roman and another individual talking about how Rafael had given Roman's wife, Blanca, a ride in this taxi cab to the Tulsa County Jail.
Pressed further, Roman admits to knowing more about Rafael than he first let on.
Rafael had a successful business and tended to like the ladies a little bit.
Roman did not like the fact that she was taking rides with Rafael.
He still wasn't willing to tell us that he was, at the scene of the crime.
Confronted with Roman's admission that she'd taken rides with Rafael, Blanca's story begins to change.
Now she knows Rafael. She's telling us that they had talked, they knew of each other.
Blanca began to tell us that during one of her rides with Rafael, that he came on to her and that she believed that it was inappropriate and told Roman about it.
We had learned that Rafael had made comments to Blanca as trying to hit on her, and that this was very upsetting to Roman. Blanca described Roman as a very jealous man.
Had something happened between Rafael and Blanca that triggered Roman to seek revenge?
Based on how many times they were shot, there was a personal element to this. We believe that Rafael's conduct towards Roman's wife could have been a motive to kill him. At this point in the investigation, we definitely feel like we have our guy.
"17 days after Rafael Hernandez Torres' murder, police are investigating husband and wife, Roman and Blanca Medrano.
There were two angles that led us to Roman. One was jealousy. We knew that Roman was aware of Rafael giving a ride to Blanca.
Roman believed that Rafael disrespected his wife by coming on to her as she described, which would indicate a motive behind Rafael's killing.
But we also knew that Roman was struggling financially. And we had every reason to believe that Roman would know that Raphael carried money with him.
We definitely feel like we've got probable cause to arrest him. We feel like we have our guy. We don't know if there's another individual at this point, but we know we've got at least one of them.
Under questioning, the couple remains adamant in their denials.
Roman would never come out and tell us the truth.
Roman told us that he had never been to the area where the homicide occurred. Blanca gives us an alibi for Roman and says that he's at the house with her. We knew that wasn't true because it was Roman's cell phone that was at the scene. We got the overlay of suspect location from the cell towers. We knew the possessor of that phone was involved in this killing.
Was it possible that someone else had Roman's phone on the night of the murder?
We had the evidence from the cell phone that Roman talked to Blanca 20 times the night of the homicide. If you're sitting right next to him, why are you calling him that many times? And she says, I'm not. So things started to change. Now we have actual evidence from, the mouth of his own wife that what he's saying isn't true. So to this point, we have a very compelling circumstantial case. We've got the cell phone records. We have motive.
Police take Roman's fingerprints and swab him for DNA.
And then we get the information back from their crime lab, and we find DNA from the scene on a beer bottle that belongs to Roman Medrano.
The DNA evidence that came back to Roman Medrano really firmed up the case against him. It went from a very circumstantial case to a really good case.
Police are ready to charge Roman with murder, but know the case is far from airtight.
There was no murder weapon. We didn't have an eyewitness to it. We knew that proving it in court was going to be very difficult to do.
Then, as detectives go back carefully over forensic reports from the state crime lab, they find something unexpected.
We were shocked when we found a second individual's fingerprint at the scene.
When that fingerprint came back with a second person, it really blew it wide open.
This fingerprint affirmed our suspicion that there was more than one person involved in the killing.
That was a bombshell. That was a game changer in terms of the criminal prosecution, because now we had an eyewitness.
That print came back to a guy by the name of Adon Mora. Adon Mora was a member of the community there in the plaza.
This fingerprint came back from the Department of Homeland Security when Adon Mora was deported previously.
Adon Mora was known as the Ice Cream Man.
When I found out that the Ice Cream Man was involved, it was a shock because you don't expect someone to be that person.
Why would Raphael's friend, the ice cream vendor, turn against him?
We knew he was at the scene. We knew he knew the victim. We knew he knew the other suspect. Marco Laura told us that Adon and Roman were pretty tight. I mean, they spent a lot of time together.
The consensus amongst the investigators is that it was more than likely a two-reason motive. One, they were in dire straits, needing money. And two, that Raphael had disrespected Roman in talking to his wife, Blanca. At that point, we issued a warrant for Adon Mora. However, we did not have a location as where he was at.
We spoke with an individual that told us that he had gotten scared about a criminal investigation and that he had went up north.
But we did find that he was on Facebook. We wrote a search warrant to Facebook, and Facebook provided us a probable location of Adon.
We were able to locate those IP addresses in a suburb of Detroit, Michigan. It gave us about a 3-block area.
Detectives contact U.S. Marshals, who take Adon into custody within a matter of hours.
I read Adon his rights. While speaking with him, he acted as if he was not close to Raphael in any way. When I asked him specifically if he had been to the area of the Caney River, he stopped the interview and requested that his attorney be present.
Hearing of Adon's arrest, Roman requests another interview with police.
During that interview, Roman was trying to give me scenarios where Adon had perpetrated this crime, and Roman was just trying to give him a ride, had no idea what was going on.
Told that Roman has pinned the blame on him, Adon decides to cooperate and tell his side of the story.
Adon eventually agrees to speak with us and said that Roman had owed him money and that he had a way to get him his money back.
Adon says that the night of the homicide, Roman tells him that he needs Adon to come with him and that he was going to get him the money. So Adon gets in the vehicle with Roman. Roman stops. They get a pack of beer, and they drive down to the riverbank of the Caney River.
Had Adon just signed on to help Roman kill Raphael? If so, which one of them fired the gun?
There's a lot of things that we don't know at this point.
We had two people that we could put at the crime scene, but we didn't know who the trigger man was.
We felt confident that we could prove that Roman Medrano was there and was a part of the crime, but Roman was trying to give me scenarios where Adon had perpetrated this crime. Adon is doing his best he can to separate himself from the crime.
It's extremely important for the family members that we get justice for them. This was an incredibly violent crime, and we wanted the person that pulled that trigger.
When I found out Raphael was lured out because someone needed help, it was just horrible. Why would you lie to him like that?
We wanted a conviction for the community, for the family, so we requested that Adon take a polygraph. There's no way that we can give Raphael back, but what we can do is solve the crime and send the perpetrators to prison.
Police now have two suspects in custody for the shooting of Rafael Hernandez Torres, Roman Medrano, and Adon Mora Ramos.
Ultimately, to come back to these two people was something that we never saw coming.
Adon's unexpected involvement in the murder gives police a valuable way to secure a conviction. To ensure he's telling the truth, police have Adon submit to a polygraph test.
During the interview with Adon, he explained to us that Roman wanted him to be at a certain location to help him with a job of some sort.
They went out to the area where the homicide had occurred, and they were there drinking some beer and just hanging out.
Adon doesn't really know what's going on. He's asking Roman, what are we doing? How are we going to get this money? Well, Roman keeps walking off, and he's on the phone. He makes a phone call where Adon can't hear him. After a period of time, Adon sees Raphael's silver car pulling down where they're at.
Raphael believed that he was going to help a friend who had gotten into an accident.
It was Roman's cell phone that made the call to lure Raphael out to the rural secluded area.
According to Adon, Raphael drank a few beers with them, and then Roman asked for his help jump-starting his car.
Roman directed Raphael's vehicle to pull down and give him a jump. Roman tells Adon to take the jumper cables and hook them up to the cars.
Adon tells investigators that what happened next took him by surprise.
Adon is trying to hook up the cables under the hood of the car, and he hears the gunshots. He looks up and says that he sees Roman standing over Raphael, and that Raphael has been shot several times. Adon fingers Roman as the triggerman, as the actual killer.
The polygraph test confirms that Adon is telling the truth.
That was the last piece of evidence that we needed. The information that he gave was truthful. And it became clear that Roman was really the one that had a personal vendetta against Raphael and the financial motive for it. But we knew Adon participated. We knew he helped out with it. Adon admitted that he put Raphael's body in the trunk and helped push the vehicle into the river. And Adon said he was afraid that Roman was going to shoot him as well.
Adon never says anything about the money. Adon just says he's worried that he's going to be next. Now he's a witness to this crime.
And so Adon, because of that fear, fled the area shortly after the crime had happened. Ultimately, we charged Adon with accessory and gave him a 15-year sentence. Adon was there. He could have stopped this, and he didn't. He could have cooperated, and he didn't. So he needed to go to prison. Roman entered a plea of no contest to murder in the first degree, and the judge sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole.
When this investigation started, it was a true whodunit. We weren't certain on who was involved or why they would want Raphael killed.
For such a violent act to be committed over a couple $1,000s and an offhand comment to Roman's wife is unexplainable.
It was a cruel and unusual way of getting back at somebody for being jealous and wanting the things that he had.
Raphael was a generous man, a benevolent man, and they took advantage of that. They knew that he would be willing to help them, and they used that good nature against him and ultimately lured him out there and murdered him.
My whole family feel relieved because we finally got justice for my brother Raphael, because his dad didn't go in vain.
My feeling and thought about these people was always like, why? Why? What problem did they have with Raphael? I don't know.
Today, the Hernandez-Torres family does everything they can to keep Raphael's memory alive.
Raphael was like a role model for everybody. He was the biggest role model for me because he showed me, even when I'm down, to always get up and fight for what I like.
We just love for Raphael to be remembered as a crazy, funny, flirtatious guy who thought of helping other people. It's always something or someone who remembers Raphael and talk about his life, and we just all start crying. And we wish he was still here, but he's still with us.
A small city in the Midwestern hub of the Rust Belt. Homemaker Diane Spice lives 5 miles north in the sleepy suburb of Blackman Township.
It was a normal, regular day, and the phone rang at early. It was like 10 minutes to 8.
The call is about Diane's niece, Amber.
It was Amber's boss telling me that she had not been to work for 2 days.
32-year-old Amber Gerwick works as an administrative assistant at a local consulting firm.
Amber worked for a company that contracted with Homeland Security. She enjoyed her job. She had just gotten a promotion, was really happy about that.
She was really excited. She was going from working in a cubicle to having an office of her own.
But it isn't just work that keeps Amber busy.
She was taking a medical administration course part-time at school, working full-time.
She was maintaining a 4.0 average while taking care of a family.
Amber has 4 children. She and her ex-husband share custody. Amber was at a good place in her life.
To Diane, her niece's sudden absence from work seems out of character.
For her not to show up for 2 days without calling in was very unusual. So I thought, well, maybe she's sick.
Amber has recently moved to a 1-bedroom apartment a few minutes from her Aunt Diane's home. Diane decides to check in on her. But she's greeted by nothing but a cold silence.
I knocked on the door pretty loudly, as loud as I could. I pounded on it for a few minutes, and I listened in to see if I could hear any sounds, but there was nothing.
Minutes later, Diane breaks the troubling news to Amber's mother, Jackie Seeger.
She asked if we had heard anything from Amber recently, and I said, well, we talked to her Saturday.
Jackie and her husband Dale speak with their daughter regularly.
Amber lives in Michigan, and I live in Georgia, and that's a long ways away. So in order to stay in touch, Amber and I talked to one another on the phone.
On April 9th, 2 days earlier, Amber was her usual talkative self.
She said that the kids were with their father that weekend and that she was going to study for the day.
But Amber never mentioned plans to miss work. Immediately concerned, Jackie tries her daughter's cell phone.
There was no answer whatsoever, just would go to her voicemail.
We decided at that point there needed to be a missing persons report filed.
Diane files a report with the Blackman Township Department of Public Safety.
Well, the next step was, of course, going to her apartment and searching.
We felt it was important to check and make sure that she wasn't physically injured and laying in the apartment or worse.
Within the hour, patrol officers arrive at Amber's apartment. But Amber is nowhere to be found.
The police had crime scene investigative people there searching the apartment. They had called the detectives at that point.
Leading the investigation is veteran detective Robert Schrock.
As we entered, we made contact with the patrol officers that were on scene.
At first glance, nothing appears out of the ordinary.
There was no sign of like a struggle or altercation. The apartment wasn't in any type of disarray. There was food in the fridge. She also didn't appear to have packed any clothes. All indicators that she probably wasn't going somewhere for long.
But then, one item suddenly catches his attention.
Amber's purse was sitting by the door. Missing from the purse was her wallet, keys to the vehicle, and the vehicle was not at the apartment.
The evidence found in the apartment leads police to believe that Amber had left willingly. Until Detective Schrock reaches the bedroom at the end of the hall.
As I walked into the bedroom, I located a cell phone sitting on the bed. And the cell phone was still on.
A laptop and various school books are also strewn across the bed.
So it looked like she just got up and took off.
The objects left behind in the bedroom raise a new level of concern.
It made it more suspicious because most people won't leave their cell phone.
We were completely mystified. We did not know what could have caused her to leave the apartment without her cell phone because it was attached to her like, it was part of her skin.
Detective Schrock begins to piece together possible scenarios.
It's one of two things. It's either Amber didn't want to be contacted or somebody got a hold of her.
Did somebody break in? Did somebody get into the apartment? And did somebody take her forcefully?
But who would want to harm Amber Gerwick? Police speak with a number of friends and acquaintances, including Amber's ex-husband, but no one stands out as a suspect. However, down in Georgia, the Seegers are convinced their daughter would never disappear under normal circumstances.
When she walked out of that apartment, we're thinking there's something wrong.
Amber never would have left her children, just up and left her children.
Amber's career in security contracting gives her access to an inventory of sensitive government information. Her family wonders if Amber's disappearance is somehow connected to her job.
She probably would have known a number of things that could have been important to somebody that was maybe a terrorist or something.
Imagination goes wild. You can think of so many different things that could be going on, so many whys and so many what ifs.
The clues found in Amber's apartment in Michigan leave the family with a host of agonizing questions. But none points police towards an answer.
It was important to get going on this because the last time anyone had spoke to her was on the 9th. A couple days had already gone by, so we were already behind on trying to figure out what had happened.
When Detective Schrock returns to the station, he enters Amber into the National Crime Information Center, or NCIC. The system will raise a red flag if Amber or her vehicle appear on police radar for any reason.
At that point, we were kind of in this limbo. Like, what do we do?
We are sitting here in Georgia. She's missing in Michigan. You know, who do we contact? Who do we talk to? Where do we turn for help?
Then, only 3 hours later, the case takes a startling turn.
And then suddenly we get this call that the car turned up in Georgia as an abandoned car in Tunnel Hill.
I remember having to have that repeated to me because I must have heard it wrong. Her car couldn't have been in Tunnel Hill, Georgia.
And here's her car, 600 miles away from Jackson, where she lives. And we're like, now what?
Coming up, police uncover a puzzling new clue.
I saw the video and I just literally could not breathe.
Missing from her home in Jackson, Michigan. But just 3 hours after her family filed a missing persons report, Amber's car turned up in the parking lot of a Dollar General store in Georgia, over 600 miles from Jackson.
And everything changed. The search had suddenly moved from Michigan to Georgia.
What's most perplexing is not the SUV's distance from Amber's home in Jackson, but rather its proximity to her parents' home in Calhoun.
That's about 35 miles north of us. It's way off the highway. It's just kind of an out-of-the-way place.
According to Tunnel Hill Police, the SUV was abandoned in the parking lot at least 2 days earlier.
Did she drive the car down here? Did someone force her to drive the car down? Did someone do something to her and then take her car?
One day after Amber is reported missing, the case is turned over to Detective Eric Burnett of the Whitfield County Sheriff's Department in Georgia. Detective Burnett invites the Seegers down to the station to discuss some new developments in the case.
I met with Miss Gerwick's parents the first time at my office, the sheriff's office. Asked them about their daughter, what kind of a person she was, what kind of friends she has. I told them what we'd found in the car.
He said initially there appeared to be no signs of a struggle inside of the vehicle. There was no signs of violence. There was no blood evidence.
However, what police did find in the front seat of Amber's car raises a slew of new questions.
Miss Gerwick's wallet was located in the car. There was no money there. It was just a debit card and her driver's license.
Police also found Amber's keys locked inside the SUV.
That was very strange to me.
If Amber drove the car, why would she leave her most important possessions behind? But then, if Amber were abducted, why would the kidnapper leave her possessions out in the open?
We ran all kind of scenarios of what might have happened to her. But the more we did that, the more confused we got. Is she running from anybody? Has someone done something to her? Those are questions that we needed to have answers for pretty quick.
There had to be something wrong for her to lock her billfold and her keys in. And the only thought that goes through my mind was she did that deliberately so somebody would know that she had been there, like leaving the breadcrumb trail.
Then, Detective Burnett reveals the most valuable piece of evidence found in the SUV, a small paper receipt. The receipt lists a number of purchases made at the Dollar General store. But since the receipt was locked inside Amber's SUV, whoever was driving the car must have been a customer at the store. And chances are, this person was caught on one of the Dollar General's many surveillance cameras.
Based on the receipt, we knew the time and a date of where to look. We wanted to see exactly who was in that store. We went to the Dollar General store and met with the manager at the store to watch the video.
Detective Burnett cues the footage up to Sunday, April 10th at 8:04 a.m., the time stamped on the receipt. What it reveals will turn the investigation on its head.
This is a surveillance video. It showed a female in there buying several items and leaving the store. She was a white female. She had a University of Kentucky blue sweatshirt on, blue jeans and tennis shoes.
I saw the video and I just literally could not breathe. Looked at the monitor and there's my daughter.
It was her. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind it was her, and it stopped me dead in my tracks.
You see her come in, she walks around, she picks up her items, she stops at the checkout. The guy comes to check her out. She kind of says hello to him. She picks up a chapstick or something right there by the cash register, pays for her stuff.
And she turned to the left and she just disappeared.
Amber's appearance on video ends here. There are no surveillance cameras in the Dollar General parking lot.
That's it. That's all we have. We have no way to know what happened when she left the store.
We watched it over and over. I just wanted to reach out and touch her. I just wanted to say, where are you, Amber?
The footage leaves the Seegers with more questions than answers.
She hasn't contacted us. She hasn't attempted to contact us, and why not? Where is she?
Never did I feel that Amber had got to Georgia willfully. I don't know why, how, but I know it's not of her own accord.
She looked up at the camera. She looks right at the surveillance camera, and we're like, okay, were we supposed to notice that? Was she trying to tell us something?
All theories aside, the Seegers must accept a painful reality. Over 3 days have passed since Amber was last seen alive.
It's like the big abyss of the unknown right before you.
My baby girl has been there, and I feel stronger now than ever before that she's in harm's way, and I can't help her.
Coming up, as the search effort expands, police turn their attention to a murky swamp in Tunnel Hill.
Dad and I both felt that this was going to end badly.
Amber Gerwig has not been heard from for 4 days. Georgia police spotted her on surveillance footage from a convenience store in the small town of Tunnel Hill, Georgia, over 600 miles from her home in Michigan. Oddly, it's just under 30 miles from her parents' house. But Amber has not been seen since, and her parents are beginning to fear the worst.
The problem is that, yeah, you saw her alive there, but you don't know what's happened in the meantime. Okay, she made it to Georgia, but she only made it as far as Tunnel Hill. How come she's not here?
No new leads have surfaced in the last 24 hours, and Amber's father, Dale, is growing restless.
Very much a helpless feeling. I don't know what to do. I haven't slept 2 nights before. Emotionally, I'm just torn up.
Dale decides to play a more active role in the investigation.
I finally had enough. I had to go looking for Amber.
He drives to the site of Amber's last known whereabouts, the Dollar General store.
I had to walk up and down the aisles. I know that I'm not going to find her there, but I know that that's where she was. And I walked up and down these same aisles. I'm in the aisle where they have the lotions and the shampoos and the stuff, and I walk up and down that. And while I'm walking, I'm thinking, Amber, what's happened to you?
There are no new clues to be found inside. But outside, the store's property borders an expanse of densely wooded swampland.
So I walked out and back, and I walked a grid pattern by myself, looking for my daughter in the tall grass. I'm I'm not going to deviate from a straight line for nothing. So I'm walking through the brambles, I'm walking through the berry bushes, I'm walking through everything.
Dale is driven by instinct, but terrified of what he might find.
I climbed down in the drainage culvert, walked that from one end to the other, walked out there through the mud as much as I could to find her.
After trudging through acres of jagged bramble and putrid swamp, Dale can go no further.
I just sat there and looked down. I was all scratched up, my legs were all muddy and everything. I remember buying some bottled water and washing my legs and stuff off. And I remember the dread of going home because I had not been successful.
The Sheriff's Department enlists the help of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, a state-run criminal justice organization.
Well, the GBI, they have more resources than we do. They bring us more manpower for searches.
Heading up the case is Special Agent Daniel Sims.
Time is of a critical element. The first couple of days is very important in the collection of facts and evidence, mainly because those things are perishable. They can go away. As far as investigative work, Amber was at the top of the list.
The first official step for the Bureau is to mount an extensive search throughout Tunnel Hill.
We organized a search with about 30 emergency personnel. The area around the Dollar General store is extremely rural. And it's hilly, if not mountainous. We wanted to make sure that she wasn't in the woods. Other officers searched the railroad tracks that transversed that strip mall that the Dollar General is part of. And we also had some individuals search the swampy area behind the Dollar General itself. And we did neighborhood canvas searches, went door to door.
This may be an awful thing to admit, but when they said that they were going to go back up there and search, I actually prayed that they wouldn't find Amber because that would mean a body, not my daughter.
You go into it with the hopes and aspirations that you'll find her alive, but at the same time, having traveled down these investigative roads before, you keep your eyes open for anything that's on the ground or motionless, or, of course, the discovery of the human body.
But after an exhaustive search, the team comes up empty. Though Agent Sims is undeterred, the failure to uncover new evidence is a blow to morale.
The longer that anyone is missing, the chances of finding them lessens.
Dad and I both expressed that we felt that this was going to end badly, that there really wasn't a lot of hope. It was very hard to be hopeful because of the history as a family.
Although it's hard to fathom, Amber's disappearance is actually a familiar trauma for the Seeger family.
I had been through this once before when my brother disappeared.
It was winter, it was in January, and he tried to go to this party and he got lost and got stuck in the snow. We didn't know where he was for 2 years. He died of hypothermia. It was horrible for our family.
How could we as a family endure a long-term disappearance again? Would we be able to get through something like that?
Coming up, Amber's father suddenly finds himself at the center of the investigation.
And I remember breaking down. I found it unconscionable, but somebody could make that accusation against me.
Missing Michigan resident Amber Gerwit was last seen alive on April 10th, 2011, in a small-town Georgia convenience store. But in the days and weeks following, in spite of a concentrated search effort led by state and local police, no new leads have materialized.
When you know that you have a missing person and their family's grieving, it's hard not to think about that even when you're off duty. And I found myself thinking a lot about Amber and where she might be.
Distraught by the lack of answers, Amber's parents devote every spare moment to searching for their daughter.
Obviously, the detectives and the police and sheriffs and Agent Sims were all doing their part, but we needed to be doing something as well.
Amber's brother, Sean, designs a missing persons poster for his parents to distribute around town.
It had 3 pictures of Amber on it. Probably the most important picture, believe it or not, was a large angel tattoo on her shoulder. I was never happy that Amber got tattooed until we had this huge angel that we could put out there and say, here's an identifying mark that you can use to find her.
When she was younger, she was enamored with angels, and we're talking from an early age. We're talking 3 years old.
I had an angel pin, and when I saw the pin, I'd forgotten I had it. I pulled it out and I put it on. It served to help me. You know, I wore it every single day.
The Seegers launch a broad campaign to get the word out.
That poster was distributed in literally thousands of those things. We're all over the southeast United States.
We had put her listing on Facebook. We would post it and we would ask our friends to repost it, and Amber's friends were posting it and reposting it.
Dale and Jackie are desperate for their efforts to yield some new leads.
That was my full-time job, was finding Amber.
Meanwhile, Agent Sims is working every angle, including some of the darkest places on the criminal landscape.
There is a certain segment of our society that are predators, and they do target people. We did focus on local sex offender databases, and we actually interviewed some people that were on that list.
Then, on April 27th, disaster strikes the South.
Northeast Alabama and northwest Georgia and southeastern Tennessee got hammered with a series of F4 tornadoes. We had to divert ourselves from the investigation to focus on rescue efforts. It was a pretty trying time for everybody in the northwest Georgia region.
Suddenly, at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Amber's case is no longer priority number 1.
We knew that he literally did not have time. That was rather devastating for us.
There might be, 2 or 3 hours a day that I could focus on Amber's investigation, and then it was right back to our efforts in helping the communities that were afflicted by the tornadoes.
But despite Agent Sims' vigilance, weeks go by with no new answers. For the Seegers, each passing day erodes their hopes of finding their daughter.
Amber had been missing for 3.5 weeks. We cried, we prayed, we didn't sleep. It was a real tough time. We were running out of ideas.
On May 4th at 1:30 p.m., Special Agent Sims calls the Seegers down to the station. He says he has an important matter to discuss with them.
He met us at the Sheriff's Department here in Gordon County, and he said that he needed to question us separately.
I told her that we had investigated the case thoroughly, that we had absolutely no evidence to suggest that her daughter had become the victim of foul play. We had no evidence that she was alive.
He said, we have no more leads. We don't know where to look anymore.
It wasn't that we were stopping the investigation. It was just at the stage where we knew that it would be easy to perceive that the investigation was grinding to a halt.
That was extremely upsetting.
For Jackie, what Agent Sims told her is almost impossible to accept. But when Agent Sims sits down with Dale, the news only gets worse.
During that meeting with him, he said something to me. Somebody had made the accusation that I knew where Amber was, and I was helping her to stay hidden.
Information had come our way that Dale would do this, and it was a bridge that I felt like I had to cross with him.
Dale feels blindsided by the accusation.
I remember breaking down. I found it unconscionable, but somebody could make that accusation against me.
One of the most unpleasant parts of my job is when I've got to sit down with somebody who is truly grieving and then challenge them as to whether they have committed a crime. I didn't feel like that the Seegers had engaged in this type of activity, but I just had to cross that bridge.
Agent Sims is convinced of Dale's innocence, but it comes as little relief.
After we got done with that discussion, he told me there was just nothing more they could do. I remember walking out of that interview room and feeling like I was carrying a 10-ton weight.
The Seegers' lives have taken on a hollow sadness they are convinced they will have to live with forever. But they soon would be proven dead wrong. Later that day, Agent Sims gets an unexpected call.
A few hours after I had this meeting with the Seegers, I received a call from the Whitfield County Sheriff's Office. One of the secretaries in the investigative division said, "You need to contact the Joliet, Illinois Police Department. There's a detective there that wants to speak to you." No matter how many cases you've done, no matter how many investigations that you have undertaken, every now and then somebody will throw a curveball at you from left field.
Only 2 hours after returning home, the Seegers' phone rings.
It was Special Agent Sims. I recognized the phone number and I said, "Yes, Special Agent." He says they've located a woman in Joliet, Illinois, who matches Amber's description, that has amnesia.
Their department had found a young female wandering in a city park and had flagged down the police. She was suffering from memory loss, did not know who she was, and that they had been dealing with a Jane Doe.
Then he says something Amber's father will never forget.
This woman had a tattoo of an angel on her back.
Coming up, a dramatic break in the case is not exactly what it seems.
I'm looking into a face that isn't right. I don't know how to explain it. She just didn't look right.
It's been 3.5 weeks since missing mother Amber Gerwick was last seen in Tunnel Hill, Georgia. Her family had all but given up hope of finding her when they received some astonishing news. An unidentified woman suffering from memory loss was found in Joliet, Illinois, nearly 600 miles north of Tunnel Hill. Joliet police think it's Amber.
They've located a woman that matched her description identically, that had an angel tattoo on her right shoulder.
In Joliet, the story of the woman who lost her memory had caught the attention of the local media, who broadcast a photo of the mysterious woman. The photo was seen by someone familiar with the missing person flyer posted on Facebook.
The Facebook communication was that this is the person you're looking for. She's Amber Gerwick.
Sims sends the Seegers a photo of the woman taken at Silver Cross Hospital in Joliet.
And there was Amber in a hospital bed, staring at us. I just said, "It's her. It's her." And Dale's like, "It's her. She's there. She's alive." We were jumping, we were screaming, we were crying.
My happiness wasn't even close to their happiness. Over the phone, you could hear that weight being lifted, and all of a sudden this flood of hope coming into their heart that, their daughter's alive.
But Dale notices something strange in the photograph.
I'm looking at Amber's picture, and I know it's Amber, but I'm looking into a face that isn't right. She just didn't look right.
Her eyes were empty, and I didn't see Amber's personality shining back at me.
Despite their misgivings about the photo, the Seegers are eager to get to Joliet. They pack their bags and begin the 600-mile drive that night. The next morning, Dale and Jackie head straight to the hospital.
The nurses gave us an update on Amber's condition and what was going on. She was unharmed. She was fine. The only thing that was wrong was her memory.
Amber is suffering from one of the most complex and puzzling conditions in medicine, transient global amnesia.
She didn't remember being married. She didn't remember having children. She just forgotten her life.
Dr. Lucy at Silver Cross put it this way: 99.99% of the doctors in this country will go through their entire career practicing medicine and will never see this type of amnesia, ever.
That afternoon, the Seegers finally get the chance to see their daughter face to face.
We saw Amber, and she was holding a little stuffed dog they had given her in the ER. And what I remember is my daughter taking one look at us, and she grabbed that doll and she hung it real close, and she started crying and said, "I don't know you. I don't remember you." And she just cried. I mean, she was just sobbing. And Jackie and I reassured her that was fine, that was no problem.
We had talked in the car and prepared ourselves for the possibility that she might not know us.
But for Amber, the reunion is a frightening realization of just how much she had lost.
They terrified me because I didn't know them. It was devastating not knowing who your parents are. Worse than not knowing who you are. These are the people who raised me. I remembered them the way they were when I was little, but I didn't know who they were at that moment.
Amber can only remember her life up to age 12. Almost all memories from her adult life have vanished.
I'd look in the mirror and the face that was looking back at me was not the face that I would expect. You know, I'd expect to look in the mirror and see that kid that I was, and it was an adult looking back at me.
The Seegers spend the next few days slowly walking Amber through the last 2 decades of her life.
They were explaining to me that I'd been missing and how long I'd been gone and how she had this angel pin. And I loved angels.
I gave her the pin and I told her, Amber, told her why I'd worn it every day. And now you need to find yourself. So this is your angel pin now to help you find yourself.
At the end of the week, Amber is reintroduced to her 4 children.
She met with each of them for a half an hour, one at a time. It was a difficult thing, but she enjoyed seeing her kids, and they were overjoyed.
Amber is released from the hospital and travels with her parents to Georgia to begin a long and strenuous recovery process. But many questions still remain, particularly what happened the night she disappeared. Fortunately, Amber can recall her last hours of lucidity.
I remember studying, sitting at my computer, trying to get schoolwork done.
In the early evening, Amber took a break from studying and headed to a nearby convenience store.
I remember going down to the car and getting there and realizing I'd left my phone upstairs. All I had grabbed was my keys and my wallet. I didn't see any reason to go back upstairs to grab my phone when I was only going to be gone for a few minutes. I went to the convenience store down the road. I picked up a couple of small things there.
And then that's it. It just stops. It's like there's nothing else after that until I remember the hospital.
Doctors assume Amber spent the next 3.5 weeks in what is known as a dissociative fugue state.
Dr. Lucy told us that the person that is in the fugue state can still operate. They can take care of themselves. They just don't know what's going on. They don't remember it.
But no one knows what triggered the episode.
We know that a traumatic event can cause global amnesia. That's what we believe happened.
Amber numerous times has been very specific in a fear that a man walks up behind her, puts his left hand on her right shoulder and spins her around. This is something new.
I believe that somebody grabbed her from behind and either frightened her terribly or did something to her and she ran.
Amber is still haunted by the dark gaps in her memory. She still has no idea where she was, where she ate, or where she slept at night during her fugue state.
I refuse to think about what happened during those 3.5 weeks when I was missing. What caused me to walk away? What caused me to just disappear like that? What happened to me while I was gone? I could drive myself crazy thinking about those things. I've had to stop thinking about it and just accept that those 3.5 weeks are gone and that I'll never get them back, even if I get the rest of my life back.
Today, Amber is still working to recover the memories she lost, but she has a positive outlook towards the future.
There's so much she doesn't know, so much she doesn't remember, and she wants to know it all. She wants to learn it all.
She's remembering a little bit more each day.
The Amber that you see today is the Amber that she's always been. There's really no change in her personality. Her sense of humor is the same.
The best thing that has come out of having amnesia, I've had this opportunity to examine my life and the decisions that I made from an almost a third-person perspective.